ESPN's Bill Connelly puts out a list every year of returning production for each FBS college football program in America. The 2025 list is out. Where do the West Virginia Mountaineers fall? We're going to talk about that, but I'm going to do more than that. In this episode, which is brought to you by BetUS Online and Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law, we're going to take a deeper dive into the numbers. Just how much returning production does West Virginia have at not only on each side of the football, but in each position group? That's what we're going to talk about in this episode, and we're going to talk about, is that going to be a problem for Rich Rodriguez and his staff? And we're going to have that conversation right after this word from one of those sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians, because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Couz's Corner, your home for top-shelf college football news and analysis around the West Virginia Mountaineers, the Big 12, and conference realignment. I'm your host, Couz. Thank you for joining the show. We're going to dive right in and talk about West Virginia's returning production from the 2024 team. Now, Bill Connelly over at ESPN put out his annual list, and we're going to go over that list. We're going to look at it and look at just where West Virginia fell on that list. And as you'll see, it's something that West Virginia fans should probably be a little bit concerned about. Panic? No. But be a little bit concerned about, I think that's more than fair. So let's go ahead and take a look. You should be able to see it on your screen right now. West Virginia, out of 136 FBS programs in America, that includes Group of 5 and Power 4, they are 98th in the country. They are returning 46% of their overall production, 38% on offense, which is 113th in the country, and 55% on defense, which is 68th in the country. So a little bit better on defense. Even though Coach Rod talked about how they're not bringing back a lot of starters or any starters on defense from last year's team, they are bringing back guys who played quite a few snaps. So that does count for something. Whereas on offense, they lost most of the guys who did anything last year, for the most part, with a few exceptions. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to dive deep into the numbers. And by the way, that number 98 in the country is 14th in the Big 12. But one reason I'm not super concerned is, hey, it was a coaching change, right? Anytime there's a coaching change, you know there's going to be changeover in roster. There's going to be roster turnover. There are going to be players hit the portal that aren't going to fit what the new coach and new staff want to do. That's what happened here, okay? There's a caveat, too, I want to mention. There will likely be more guys leaving the spring. So this is going to change. These numbers aren't going to stay the same. But since Bill Connelly decided to come out with it right now, I thought it would be a good time to talk about it and take a deep dive into these numbers. Now, the way Bill does his calculations, he has a formula he uses. But just a surface level look at it, because it gets very granular and I don't understand it all. But I do know if you have a player returning from last year that played for West Virginia who produced, they get full credit for that player, right? If it's a transfer that comes in who played at a previous school and produced, they do take that production into account, but they don't get full credit for it because it was at a different school. So if you take a look at the players that West Virginia are bringing back from the 2024 roster alone and don't count transfers, the number is actually much lower than 46%. It's actually about 20% based on my calculations using Pro Football Focus. If you're looking at snaps, now they may be looking at more than just snaps. I think they're actually looking at statistically production. But when you look at snaps played, West Virginia is returning 20% of the overall snaps from last year's team. That's not a lot, and we'll dive deeper into those numbers here as we go through the show. Let's go ahead and start off on the offensive side of the football. That's where we want to start. Now, we all know that Garrett Greene left the quarterback position, right? He graduated. He's moving on, trying to make it in the NFL as a wide receiver, by the way. Nico Marchiol, though, is returning. Nico accounted for about somewhere between 18 to 20% of the overall snaps last year at quarterback. He threw 56 passes, completed 37 of those passes, which was good for 66.1%. He threw 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and threw for 434 yards. So some decent success. Had a decent season. He also ran the ball 40 times for 120 yards, which was 3 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. But that 3 yards per carry number is a little skewed because that does account for sacks. Okay, he was sacked a few times. So you have to take that into account. So they do have some returning production at that position, and we all know that Nico also produced in 2023 when he played. So it's not like they're bringing, it's not like they don't have anybody coming back. And then if you throw in the fact they're bringing in Jalen Henderson from Texas A&M, who's played, they're bringing in Max Brown from Charlotte, who's played not only at Charlotte but also played snaps at Florida before that. They do have experience at the quarterback position, just not a ton of it. But Coach Rodriguez seems to be extremely confident in the quarterbacks he has in that room. And if he's confident, I'm confident. And I feel like any of those guys can run his offense. Heck, I even think Khalil Wilkins, the redshirt freshman, and Scotty Fox, the true freshman, may be good enough to run Rich Rod's offense, if not this year, at least in the future. One position where they are going to be extremely thin as far as returning production goes, I do think they're loaded with talent because they brought in guys like Cam Vaughn out of Jacksonville State, among others. We have, Dom Collins, the speedster from West Virginia, is coming back. Raymond's coming back at receiver as well. But when you look at guys who played quite a few snaps and produced last year, Rodney Gallagher is a leading receiver returning. He caught 26 passes for 288 yards and 3 touchdowns. Next on the list, he had 26 catches. Who's next on the list from last year's team? Jaden Bray with 2 catches. 2 catches for 88 yards. A huge drop-off. So Rodney Gallagher needs to try to be the leader in that room. He's going into his junior season, and I think has a chance to be special with Rich Rodriguez leading the offense. You have Jarrell Williams, who caught a pass for 17 yards last year. And then you have Dom Collins, who did appear in one game, played 1 snap, but did not have any targets. No passes thrown his way. But overall, when you look at snaps played, West Virginia is returning 25% of their overall snaps played at the receiver position from 2024. But again, they brought in guys like Cam Vaughn and others that I'm really excited about. Now, when you look at the tight end position, they're losing almost everybody when it comes to pass-catching tight ends. Obviously, Cole Taylor graduated, moving on to try to make it to the NFL. Traylon Davis graduated also. He did have a year of eligibility, but has chose not to play. He caught a few balls. Jack Samarco is the only tight end on the roster who caught a ball in 2024, according to Pro Football Focus. He caught 1 ball for 4 yards. All the other tight ends on the roster, including the ones brought in out of the portal, I feel are mostly going to be blocking tight ends. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some of those guys are better receiving tight ends than I thought. But it looks like most of the tight ends they brought in are run blockers. So I would not be surprised to see Coach Rod and his staff go out into the portal maybe in the spring and bring in another tight end or two to try to get deeper in that room from a pass-catching perspective. Now let's talk about the one position, not only on offense, but on the entire team that I'm probably the most concerned about, and that's offensive line. When you look at the offensive line, West Virginia is returning 2% of the overall snaps played last year. 2%. The offensive line played about 4,749 snaps. Now, these are estimated numbers. They're bringing back 116. Now, these snap counts are obviously the cumulative of all the players. If you take the number of snaps played by each lineman or each player, the cumulative number for the offensive line is about 4,749 snaps. They're bringing back 116 snaps. Landon Livingston, Nick Cray, Xavier Bosley, the 3 off the top of my head that are coming back. They lost 4 of their starters to graduation, and they lost their 5th starter to the transfer portal in Tomas Rimac, and they lost 2 of their top substitute linemen, backup linemen, Johnny Williams and Sully Weidman. They also lost them to the transfer portal. So they bring back Xavier Bosley, Landon Livingston, Nick Cray, and a few other guys, but very few snaps played. 116 total in 2024. Can these guys gel together with the new guys that they're bringing in? Tykeus Crawford, Walter Youngbear, Will Reed. Will those guys, Makaniole from LSU, will they be able to gel with the guys currently on the roster? Jack Bicknell Jr., the offensive line coach, has his work cut out for him. He'll have a tough job because continuity probably matters at the offensive line spot more than any other position on the football field. And he has got to make sure that the guys on the roster now and the guys they brought in from the portal gel together. So they're going to have to sort of put it in overdrive, hit the gas pedal to get these offensive linemen ready to go and get them ready to play together for the 2025 season. That is the one position I am definitely concerned about going into 2025. And again, maybe Coach Rod goes out into the portal and gets another guy or two in the spring that has some experience. We'll see what happens there. Next, we're going to go over and look at the defensive side of the ball. But before we do that, though, I do want to give a shout out to my other sponsor. Right now, if you're looking for a brand new sports book, look no further than our good friends over at BetUS Online. Right now, BetUS has a special going where you get 150% sign-up bonus on your first your first deposit. You get 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit only with promo code YouTube150. Again, promo code YouTube150 gets you a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit. On your next two deposits, you get a 125% sign-up bonus, and all this is for a grand total of up to $2,000 in bets. So take advantage of that offer today. It's only good through the end of February, folks. So please do it today if you're looking for a brand new sports book. But please make sure if you play, please do so responsibly. And if you or anyone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER for help. Now, let's go ahead and dive in to the defensive side of the ball and dive into some numbers here. When you look at overall statistics, okay, let's start off looking at statistics. Tackles for loss. 2024 team had 68 tackles for loss. You're bringing 15 of those back, which is 21%. They had 5 interceptions on the season in 24. Not very many, by the way. 5 is a horrible number for an entire football season. They're bringing back 0 of those interceptions. They had 28 passes defended. They're bringing back 5, which is 18%. And the asterisk to that is Rodney Gallagher had one of those 5. So does that even count? Because I doubt he'll be playing both sides of the ball anymore. Sacks. The team had 20 sacks total a year ago. You're bringing back 5 of those 20 sacks. 25%. So again, not great. And tackles. You're bringing back 25% of your overall tackles from 2024. They had 862 total tackles as a team. You're bringing back 213 of those tackles, with the leader being Reed Carrico, who had 54. Ben Cutter right behind him with 39. And then KK Tarnu had 35. And then from there is a massive drop-off down to 17 at Hammond Russell and Dasani Redwood. So not a ton of production coming back statistically. When you look at overall snaps played, the defense played about 9,400 snaps overall in 2024. They're bringing back about 2,200 of those snaps, which is about 23% of the snaps. Not great, right? Not great. At least it doesn't sound great. Now, the argument to that is it was a bad defense, so maybe it's not that bad to have a roster turnover here, okay, which we'll get into in a minute. When you look at the defensive backs, the one unit that had the most struggles in 2024, they're bringing back 22% of the snaps. Defensive line, you're bringing back 36% of the snaps. So that position is actually a little bit more solid because you're bringing back guys like Hammond Russell, Dasani Redwood, folks like that that played quite a few snaps. And then at the linebacker spot, you're bringing back 29% of your snaps, led by, of course, Reed Carrico and Ben Cutter, the two guys I mentioned earlier. So those are your total snaps coming back on the defensive side of the ball, along with your overall statistics. So bottom line is, I'm less concerned about the defense than I am the offense right now, strictly because I think it all starts up front, and I like what West Virginia has coming back on the defensive line. Let's not forget Corey McIntyre, who likely would have played a lot of snaps last year, will be back from an injury in 2025. Don't forget about Edward Vestorinen, who's sticking around, at least for now. He missed most, I think, all but 2 games of the 2024 season with an injury, and he would have likely been a starter for most, if not all, of the 2024 season, and was a starter in 2023. So you're getting some production with him. So I feel really good about what they have up front on the defensive line in Morgantown. I also sort of like what they have at linebacker. I love the Wilson kid, or the Wilson young man, I should say. He's a grown man. The Wilson guy they're bringing in from Colorado State, I really love his game, Chase Wilson. They're bringing in a talented young linebacker out of North Carolina in Ashton Woods. So I like what they have at those spots. They're going to be a little young, but I like the talent and the snaps that they have at those spots. The secondary, it's a crapshoot at this point. You have Jacoby Spells back, KK Tarnu back. Those are the two leading the charge, really. You do have talented young guys in Israel Boyce coming back as well. Zay Jennings coming back. So there's some really young, talented guys. Hopefully they stick around, but not a ton of experience. But again, it was a secondary that struggled, one of the worst secondaries in all of college football as far as statistically. Now, how much of that was because you couldn't get enough pressure on the quarterback? That's a fair question. They tried to fix that by going out and getting guys like Jamoy Robinson out of the transfer portal, getting guys like Braden Siders out of Wyoming who could come in and make an impact as well. So we will see just how good these transfers are that the Mountaineers brought in. Hopefully Coach Zach Alley and his staff can coach them up. But I do like, when I look at this under a microscope, I think the defense is in a better spot as far as returning production. When you look at a combination of the transfers and the returning players from last year. But the offense, even though they're not returning as much, they're under the tutelage of one of the greatest offensive minds in college football in Rich Rodriguez. So that makes me feel a little bit better about the offense. So I want to hear what you think, though. What do you think about these returning production numbers, the deeper dive I took outside of just what Bill Connelly had to say? I wanted to take a deeper look, but I want to hear what you thought about these numbers. Let me know in the comment section. I want to give a shout out to my VIP channel members of this episode: West Virginia Wildman 82, S. Michael DeHart, Lonnie Johansson, Earl Carr, and WVU Fan 13. If you want to join and become a club level member or pub level member, right now you can hit the join button below if there's one on your device. If there's not, go to my channel homepage. There's a join button beside my profile photo. There's also a link to it in the description box. That will help. That was the easy way to help my channel. It doesn't cost you a lot of money, and you can help me keep the lights on here. And there are also some perks like early access to videos for club level members, the random shout outs for all members, and then you get first dibs in the chat during live streams as well, because there'll be a badge beside your name showing that you are a channel member. So if you want to become one of those members, again, join the channel today. I also want to give a shout out to my sponsors, BetUS Online and Cats, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner Attorneys at Law. Thank them as well for helping keep the lights on. Remind you that you can also support me for free by hitting the thumbs up button on the video, by sharing it with your family and friends who like West Virginia Mountaineer football, and by subscribing to the channel. I need to get to 10,000. I'd like to get there by the end of 2025. There's also a video in the corner of your screen right here that YouTube thinks you might like. There's also one on the other side from my Hoops from the Hills basketball channel that you might just like if you like West Virginia basketball. So check those out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Hoops from the Hills as well. Follow me over there, where I cover West Virginia Mountaineer basketball all season long. Thank you for tuning into this show. Hope the rest of your day is top shelf and Q Country Roads.